The 7 rules of Psytrance, if you follow them, then your track will really succeed. Rule number 1, kick and bass is holy. We are getting really deep and divine here. So what do I mean by this? So first of all, we want to have it stable and consistent. We don't want to have every kick and bass sounding different as an individual, but we also don't want to have kind of like the combination of our kick and bass, or even with the whole mix, which we'll talk in a second about, changing all the time. So if I look at many of my students' tracks, I notice this big mistake that your low end is not consistent. That is super, super important in Psytrance. If you screw that up, it screws up everything in your track. So what can you do to make it consistent? So number 1 is you bounce it out to audio, and then you have, for example, 1 kick here, and then you make a little fade here in the end. Also take care that everything has the proper length, that you don't have anything overlapping or any artifacts or whatever. You could also basically do this, actually do it like this, and then you select it. You also have all the warpings and stuff off here, and then you start copying it across. So like this, you do 4, select it, you do another 4, and then you select it, and you copy it across, and have your nice 16 bars loop here, or 8 bars actually, and you could copy it even 1 more, and then you consolidate it, and you end up with a nice stable kick which looks everywhere the same. And the same you do with the bass. You bounce out a few notes, you really bring them to the lengths you want to have them, you add little fades in the end so that it doesn't really click, so that it also ends like nicely. You can basically, I already did this and I bounced this again, so you want to have it like that, it kind of like gives the flow here, and then you end up with a really neat and stable kick and bass. There comes one more thing which I mentioned in a few other videos. As the kick and bass is holy, it needs so much space because it doesn't want to be with all the unholy. So everything else, your drums, your effects, your leads, they don't play below 100 Hertz. For example, if I solo this and we look into the span, then you can see that we have a lot of nice space there, which is reserved for our kick and bass. It doesn't mean that our kick and bass only lives here, but that's kind of like, that's heaven, you know, like there's nobody else allowed. And take really care of that. Also take care of that with your reverbs and delays. Because for example, I have a channel here, it's subs, and the subs is things which have some low end, and as you can see, there is no kick and bass while my subs are playing, and there is no sub like overleaking like this here and then having whatever like a tail over here into my first kick and bass. So really take care of that, and the safest and securest way is to bounce it to audio in the end. If you like this video, then please hit the like button. Rule number 2, drums are short, fast and loud. So what do I mean by this? With short, I mean most of the drums we're using, for example here, the hi-hats, they're like tuck, 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 tuck. They're not like this techno hi-hats where they make like psh, everything is very like transient and very cut, so you have some spaces here in the end, at least in my production. So we come to later to the whole rule thing here, but that's what I would really recommend you to not like have that like super fat blown up drums with tons of reverb and everything on it, because it just doesn't fit the vibe in my opinion. It doesn't really transmit the energy. So if we listen to kick and bass and drums here, then you notice it has a very fast feeling, and it comes from like a lot of drums but very short drums. And that's what I mean with fast. So you always looking for drum patterns which sound faster. So if you compare 2 drum patterns, then I would go with the one which sounds faster, because that usually has more energy in my opinion. And the third thing, drums are quite loud actually in the mix. So I have my kick here at -36, and let's look into a crowded part here somewhere, here maybe. So that's the kick level. The leads are a little bit lower, but can go to here and can even exceed sometimes. But the drums, they go a little bit higher. So that's how you want to have your drums in Psytrance. Rule number 3, leads are energetic, hypnotic, trancey, or mysterious. You want to have your leads having some emotion. So I give you 2 examples here in my track. So this I would say is more trancey. It's like an acid which repeats all the time. It has a very, very repetitive pattern, only a few notes. Bim, 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 bim. So like that. It could go on forever, and you just do it with the automation and all that stuff. You make it interesting, but it can be very hypnotic actually. Then this part, for example, would be more energetic. It's more rhythmic part, very kind of like fast shots and everything. And I give you one for, I would say, more mysterious, like a sample and hold here. So always think of what emotion you want to reach. Usually it's one of those, I would say, which fits quite well in every Psytrance track. If you haven't subscribed to this channel already and you want to learn more about Psytrance production, then hit the subscribe button and the bell icon. The bell icon is really important because this will always notify you when there are new tutorials for you to learn from. Rule number 4, we mix psychedelic. So we want to have a very psychedelic mix, and what psychedelic music actually has in common. So if you look at psychedelic rock and all those things, it's kind of like dissolving into the room. So you have a lot of like long reverb things or huge delays. This dotted 8 ping pong delays are really nice in Psytrance. So you really want to kind of like blend the elements into each other and create just like huge room in which everything kind of like melts into each other. So that's, I would say, something you should definitely have in a Psytrance track. So for example, listen to this. So I hope you could really feel the room I placed this in, and especially also in intro sections, like when we have just the kick and bass, we use effects and put like very long delays on that. So that's something you can experiment. You always need to take care that if you have a very crowded part, that it doesn't get too blurred by it. So if you add like a lot of reverb and delay, it can soon sound very messy. So I would always check if you turn the delay or the reverb off, if it sounds better then again, and then maybe you need to dial it back, or you could just try, if you have like a delay on it, to really tweak the knob, make it like very tiny, then make it middle, then make it big, and then really see where the differences are and if it gets better or worse. But you should experiment with really trying to melt and blend all your elements, especially between those blocks here. If you have here a 16 bars block, then you want to also have maybe the old block kind of like overlapping with those delays and reverbs and creeping into the new block. It's always dependent on the situation, so don't take this like, yeah, I need to slap now everywhere like big reverbs and delays on it. So really evaluate it on the spot and see if it's proven A/B with the old version. Rule number 5, we are using certain scales in Psytrance. To be honest, I'm using mostly the Phrygian scale for my track. So that's basically the scale I have as the foundation for the whole track. And then I escape and use notes out of the scale. And by that, you're actually creating new scales within the track. And you can do that, in my opinion. It can very easily sound off, but for me, I think it's kind of like an element to really bring tension in. Anyways, you should choose one scale or mode or like set of notes which you use the most in your track. I brought some of those scales here, which are really nice for Psytrance. So as I already mentioned, a Phrygian scale, it sounds like this. Then we have Phrygian dominant. You can see the difference is not huge. So you have actually one note difference here. Then we have the minor scale. You have also like harmonic minor, natural minor, and you can choose whatever suits you the best. It sounds like this. By the way, you can set the scales here, and then if you hit that scale button, it folds you to only the notes of that scale. Then we have the Dorian scale. the Bayreuth. It gets a very, very kind of like mysterious and Arabic touch. Then we have the Hungarian minor. Also has that touch. And here I found one interesting scale. It's Arabia Ziraf Kent. I don't know how to spell this. This one also sounds very, very interesting. Rule number 6, you want to either rise or fall in your track. We want to have a constant movement in our track, so we either go up or we go down. But we aren't really stable on something, so at least I think full on you always want to have some movement, and usually it goes up until you are reaching the climax and then you're building up again. So for example, take this part here and then really take a notice on how the movement is. I can already tell you it's like up, and then we are going into the next part here, and then we're doing the same thing actually again. And if you want to know how to do that, I have a whole video on how to make build-ups, and I have even more videos on transition and drops if you check out the search on my channel. But the one video on build-ups I will link you up here. And rule number 7, there are no rules. There's a lot of things you can do in music, like scales or like this, as we have seen, like 16 bars blocks stuff I have here in the whole track. But in the end, you can break any of those rules. You just need to know when and how. That's the goal. Maybe don't break the rule in the beginning, the number 1 with the kick and bass that it's stable. But even that can be broken if you filter it out in a section, or if you have some weird section in the middle where you have some offbeat stuff and then you do some crazy glitching and gliding with it. So there's nothing really cemented. So always think twice if you want to break this intentionally, but be careful if you don't break it intentionally. So what I would recommend you is that you go like Spices a little bit sometimes out of the box and break those rules intentionally, but otherwise maybe have a checklist about those things and really see if your track delivers them correctly. If you want to know more about arrangement, then you can watch this video next.